And now we have further consideration of corrections with a structured sentencing program from the state of North Carolina. And we have Judge Thomas Ross as well as Robin Lubitz.
Good morning. Because of structured sentencing, as Yogi Berra would say, the future in North Carolina ain't what it used to be. Through a unique merging of public policy, computer technology, and physical accountability, North Carolina has transformed a previously chaotic, irrational, and wasteful criminal justice system into a model of order, reason, and efficiency. In 1993, North Carolina's criminal justice and correction system was in crisis. The situation in North Carolina was not much different than that faced by most other states then, and many states still. Our prisons were overcrowded and subject to federal court orders. We had a legislatively enacted prison cap. We were paroling a large number of offenders after they had served only a small portion of their sentence. We had even many offenders who rejected probation because serving a small part of their sentence was easier than having to take responsibility for their lives. Most significantly, the public was rapidly losing confidence in their justice system. Structured sentencing was developed and enacted with the hope of solving the crisis. Specific goals were set for the new program. These included returning truth in sentencing to the courtroom, eliminating parole, creating a balance between sentencing policy and correctional resources, establishing consistency and certainty of punishment, and setting priorities for the use of correctional resources by using prison primarily for violent and career offenders while using community-based punishments for nonviolent offenders. In an effort to achieve these goals, North Carolina became the first state to successfully integrate a variety of reform efforts, including sentencing guidelines, truth in sentencing, a Community Corrections Act, intermediate punishments, prison population projections, and physical impact analysis, all that into a single coordinated and comprehensive package. Now, 3 years and 1 week after the effective date of structured sentencing, the clear evidence is that this government program has accomplished its goals and has solved the problems it confronted. North Carolina no longer has overcrowded prisons. We no longer have a prison cap or any federal control of our prison system. Judges are now telling the truth in the courtroom and the revolving door has been shut. Violent offenders are now more likely to be incarcerated and are serving longer times in prison. On the other hand, and just as importantly, nonviolent offenders are less likely to go to prison and instead are being punished less expensively and many believe more effectively in the community. Certainty of punishment has been restored, and thus the number of offenders voluntarily rejecting or violating probation has declined significantly. Finally, under structured sentencing, offenders who commit the same offense and have similar prior criminal history are receiving similar sentences without regard to race or gender. The dramatic success of structured sentencing in solving perhaps the most vexing of problems facing any state is very important, and we believe by itself deserving of recognition. However, perhaps the most significant impact of structured sentencing has been on the making of public policy in our state. Through the use of a computer simulation model, the Sentencing Commission is able to project the resources that will be required if new criminal punishment legislation is enacted. Thus, the cost of punishment is now considered in the debate of new criminal legislation in a way it never was before. The injection of cost has not only depoliticized the debate on criminal justice issues, but even more importantly, it has positioned the correction budget in context with the whole state budget. The General Assembly no longer passes criminal legislation in isolation. Because we now know the cost of such legislation, these proposals are considered only as part of the general debate of how all of the state's resources should be allocated among all of her many needs. It is this major shift in the manner and tenor of public debate that is so unique and allows much more rational public policy to be made in our state. On the question of whether this can be replicated for other states, we know the answer to be yes, and Rob Lubitz will now talk to you about that.
Briefly. As a past chair of the National Association of Sentencing Commissions, I have observed firsthand the significant impact that this innovation is having on state sentencing policies. Judge Ross and I have visited with leaders and legislators from 15 states now, and we've been visited in turn from representatives from 5 other nations. Oklahoma has recently enacted legislation based on a large part on our program. Massachusetts and South Carolina are poised to do so shortly, and several other states are now in the process of developing similar recommendations. Clearly, North Carolina is looked upon as a model reform for the nation, and this innovation would help us to help other states to emulate it.
Finish that sentence admirably well. Bill Klinger and then Tom Downing.
It seems to me that the program, which obviously has had enormously great success, also puts a pretty heavy burden on the local communities for those prisoners or those people who are charged who are not going to be sent into prison. Does the state assist the communities in carrying that load, or is that a load that they have to absorb by themselves?
A critical component of our comprehensive package was a state-county partnership act. It's a grant program in which the state offers funds to counties to supplement the community corrections available in those communities. And it's really a county initiative. They decide what kind of program they need, what they want, then they seek the funding from the state, and those funds are made available. And they're made available in an allocation formula that makes every county rather have the opportunity to participate. So we've really helped them in that way. In addition, we've bolstered other community correction programs, increasing the number of probation officers and the other number of state programs that are available in the communities for community punishment.
Tom.
I'm interested in how you've managed to overcome the ritual sentencing fads that we go through and the wars on crime that we continue to fight and talk about politically. How did you manage to do that in North Carolina? Was the system just overwhelmed by the number of prisoners that forced you to re-examine this, or was there something else at work in North Carolina that there isn't in New York or California?
Well, I think clearly the crisis that we had was the driving force. But we were able to do it with a comprehensive package. We were able to say we're going to be tough on violent offenders and send them more often to prison and for longer times. In order to do that, however, we're going to have to do something different with nonviolent offenders. And I think we went against the trend of just building more prisons and just sending more people to prison. And we went against that by trying to use community punishments more frequently.
Todd Ridings and then Barbara Roberts.
I have a bit of experience with the North Carolina legislature, having covered that as a reporter some years ago. So I know that they are not any looser with the purse strings than any other state legislature with which I'm aware. And yet, as I understand it, you mentioned a few states that have similar programs, and perhaps the difference in success, if I'm correct, is that the legislature has provided the resources which you've spoken to, which it has not happened other places. How in the world did you manage to do that?
Well, I think it's the importance of bringing the fiscal issue into the debate. The rhetoric for getting tough on crime can just continue to escalate. But when you have the ability to say what it's going to cost and show that to legislators, it changes the whole debate. And our legislators want to be fiscally conservative. They want to be tough on crime. And by bringing both those issues together, I think it allowed for much more rational decisions to be made.
If I could just add to that too, I think we showed to them we're going to save you a lot of money in prison construction, and we can transfer that into bolstered spending in the communities and in community correction programs, and therefore spend less money but do it more effectively.
Barbara.
In my description of this, I wrote 2 things: full service, and the other one was less rhetoric and more reality, and I think it's remarkable. One of the factors that seems so strange to me to have been able to accomplish is to literally rid yourself of the parole system. I think it's terrific, but I can't imagine how you politically did it. And knowing the power structure of parole officers, which is pretty heavy in lots of states as a lobby organization, if nothing else, tell me how you positioned yourself to make the parole system go away and give you the full service operation that you have.
Well, I hate to sound like a broken record, but again, I think it's the comprehensive nature of what we offer. We did offer a plan of post-release supervision, and that coupled with increased probation services allowed us to transfer a lot of those officers on the payroll to other positions, and so they haven't lost their jobs. I think that was really the key. But the services for the inmates have actually been increased on the back end as opposed to cut down, I think.
Margot.
In
in discussions of this topic in our state, there's been a lot of debate that this results in people getting unequal sentences for the same crime. Did you have to face that in your state?
We've had to face, I think, almost every question that's been asked about these sorts of things. And to the contrary, I think the guideline system that we have and that most other states have considered guidelines have is you really, I think, enhance the consistency based on race and gender that sentences have, because what you're doing is trying to treat people that commit the same crime and have essentially the same criminal history in the same way, so that you really reduce the amount of racial and gender discrimination by this kind of system.
Antonia?
Well, I want to follow up on that question. Have you seen any discrepancies in racial discrepancies in the application of the law?
I think the short answer is no.
Do I understand you to say that making the public, appealing to the public's cost consciousness is the answer to demagoguery about crime in prisons?
Well, it certainly changes the debate in the legislature, because then if one person introduces a get tough on crime measure, somebody else is going to stand right up with the data that we give to them, to all of them, and say, well, here's what it's going to cost them.
So
where's the money going to come from?
Your advice to the New York and State and California